Welcome back to Africa Monitor Daily YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. In a thought-provoking speech, former South African President Thabo Mbeki has ignited a conversation about the need to move away from the US dollar as the world's dominant currency. Mbeki has accused the United States of misusing its monetary power to coerce non-compliant nations into submission. He emphasized that the West had been using the dollar as a tool to impose sanctions on countries it deems as rebels.
I think it's clear that the conflict in Ukraine is in many respects a conflict between the US and the Western countries against Russia. An important part of it, obviously, this is fact, has been not only the supply of weapons to Ukraine by the Western countries, but sanctions against Russia. And so some of the, as we've all seen, that effort to impose sanctions on Russia and have it isolated economically, globally, hasn't worked. Because countries like China, like India, many African countries, countries in Latin America have not joined that boycott campaign. And part of what's risen in that context is a question that our colleague is raising, which is about the use of the dollar as an international reserve currency. It's clear, this is part of what is happening, that many countries are saying, in order to avoid this consequence of the imposition of sanctions by the United States, on the basis that you are using their currency, in order to avoid the consequences of sanctions that arise from that, let's walk away from the dollar. And hence there's a global discussion taking place about that, and some of it is bilateral. When Russia trades with China, there's no reason why they must use dollars to exchange. None. I saw that even India is saying the same thing. So globally, there's a discussion that is taking place to say we must find alternative means of trading among ourselves and not subject ourselves to the situation where there's one currency in the world which becomes a global reserve currency, because it gives the country that is the issuer of the money, that's the United States, it gives it the power to impose its will on everybody because you are depending on the dollar. So there is that discussion that is going on. I don't know where it's going to end, but I think one can see the logic of it. One can see the logic of it. For instance, again arising from that conflict, one of the matters that that's come up very sharply, is that many African countries depend on wheat, which comes from the Ukraine and Russia. Many African countries depend on fertilizer, which comes from Russia. And part of the problem with that, in the context of what we're discussing, is that if the African countries want to buy this wheat, they've got to buy it in dollars. But there are the sanctions which prohibit particular relations with Russia. So in the end, you say that we can't use this currency, so there's no alternative currency. And that's part of the reason, only part of the reason, for instance, that the Russians have said that they appreciate the fact that there are many African countries who are going to suffer from very low yields of crops because of the absence of fertilizer, which is going to impact very negatively on food security and then all of these issues. And therefore, they've said we are then ready to donate this fertilizer to the African countries to avoid this obligation to be used in particular kinds of money, because the fertilizer is needed. So it's better that we as a country and the companies just donate this fertilizer. And indeed, I might say this, that the second biggest producer of fertilizer in the world is a Russian company. And they came to discuss this matter with the foundation. We discussed it with them to say it is very correct. The continent needs this fertilizer. And we can't use the obstacle of a dollar or whatever to deny the continent this thing, because it's really a matter of life and death for our people. So, the AU, fortunately, AU also in this last conference, summit, they took up the same matter. So hopefully the matter will be acted upon. I'm coming back to this matter, therefore, that again you have an instance here which says it is better that we had a diversified financial system rather than to be so tied up with one currency. Hence, what the conflict that is taking place in Ukraine has produced that particular consequence.
The global movement towards de-dollarization is gaining momentum, with many nations joining the cause as a liberation movement from the hegemony and imperialism of the United States. South Africa, the key member of the new BRICS formation, is at the forefront of the movement, working tirelessly to transition away from the dollar when it comes to trade among member nations. Several countries with significant oil reserves have also applied to join the BRICS formation, indicating a significant shift in the global financial landscape.